Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Sinkholes. Don't worry, you're probably not living on a sinkhole. Probably. Now, let's drop the lights and start the show.
Welcome, everybody, to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by The Weekly Them. The best way to pass the time when you need to read a magazine, pick up The Weekly Them. Welcome, everyone, to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I'm Todd.
And we're filmmakers. We like to analyze films and tease them apart and see what's working in them, how do they operate, what can we learn from them, working, in front of and behind the camera as actors. Todd's a musician. He's doing scoring and all kinds of things. He's put out several albums and knows a lot about the whole music thing. And we're both actors, and of course I'm writing and I direct all kinds of weird little things for clients as well as for us for fun. So we use all that. It all kind of swirls into the fro-yo of this show.
Nice.
we're the peanut M&M toppings. And so we were talking before the show got going, like just how much can go behind the scenes that you don't necessarily know or understand. Like I had a shoot last week where the client got ambitious. Like, we were doing a bunch of product videos, basically stuff that they would put on their website and, on their Amazon product listing. And some of we did 4 in like a day and a half. And normally I try to do like 1 during one day. And the location that we booked was really nice. And so I wanted to maximize that. And the client had all these new products they're trying to launch. And so we get in there and we're just, cooking. And I was, telling you that the client doesn't necessarily know all the work that goes into this. Some of these, shoots would take maybe like 45 minutes of me kind of working through my shot list, because a lot of the times for me, like if I'm shooting a lot of available light, it's about timing, right? Like the sun is going to be at this specific point. That's going to give me the exact kind of lighting that I want. And then once that happens, I need to be able to go and get everything that I want. And then some of it is not as specific, but you still got to be cognizant. Like this location was in the middle of downtown Austin, huge windows everywhere. Like it took me hours of going through like property listings to find the right one. And once I found it, it just had these huge windows all over the place that would let in not just a lot of interesting light, but also visuals, background visuals that I really wanted that would speak to the products that we were making. But some of the products, I didn't need all that. And they were just so tricky. And I would spend like shooting cutlery, right? Really difficult just because it's so reflective. And if you do it wrong, it's going to look like trash. And then on top of that, it's going to reveal all the stuff behind the camera, literally, the camera itself. Oh, there's your softbox. And so you have to be very, aware of how you're shooting those things. And it can just take, a couple of days of testing in your kitchen. Like, okay, well, here's a butter knife. How do I shoot a butter knife? And you're just working through style and like, how does it operate for the client's vision and what they're trying to do, and also look good and all these kinds of things. And so that's just for one, 45, 60 second product video like that. Extrapolate that to something like a 2-hour film that you're going to make. And that can take weeks. And so if you're looking sometimes at a budget, like how did they spend $45 million on that movie? It's like, yeah, okay, well, sure. Some of that is definitely going to be the day, right? Because on the day you're going to have 30, 40 plus crew members that are all doing random, very different things. Some people are just there to drive trucks. And then they sit and wait around until it's their turn to drive the truck again, right? Teamsters. But then you have some people that are, just there checking in equipment and checking it out. I talked to a grip who worked on like some Ben Affleck films. He's like, man, the best gig I ever had was literally I would wake up in the morning, go and check what they needed that day, and make sure that they had it loaded on the truck, and I'd go drop it off. Then I'd go home and go back to bed. Like that was my entire day. But Amazing. It was like a terror of, 2 hours of work and making sure I didn't screw anything up. But then I'm good. Like I'm chill mode for the rest. And there's so many of those kinds of things that happen on a film set. There's so many roles and people that are responsible for one specific thing, and some of that's contractual, and therefore you can't have other people stepping in to do it, unions, because that'll get you in trouble. And in both lanes, like as the person trying to help out, quote unquote, good intentions. But then if that's your role, it's also going to get you in trouble for letting them help out. Maybe there's insurance reasons why they shouldn't be doing that stuff. A million things going on behind the scenes that people will just never guess. Any favorites of yours, like people that just don't understand the process, whether it's pre-production of like, yeah, we need a makeup test, and that's going to take $25,000 over the course of 3 days to have your director, your DP, your makeup artist, your talent all on set, not on set, but, in some pre-production trailer somewhere testing the makeup. Like, does the makeup look good in this lighting, with this camera, with this lens, and with this actor? Does the talent still look good, for our purposes here? Like, you do all the camera testing, lighting testing with your talent alone can take up a full day to be like, do their features work with all the things we're trying to do style-wise in this film? Like, that will literally take an entire day of just saying, how does my talent look good? With all these things, with all these factors. Grab your gaffer and let's play and make sure we get all the exact styles, so that when we're on set and we move into a new deal, I want to make sure that they're still going to look good. And if I don't have that shorthand already established, like, oh yeah, okay, we're going here, well, let's go soft diffusion or bleached muslin, and we're gonna bounce that here and there, and that in this angle they're gonna look their best and maintain continuity with all the rest of our setups. A million things, right? I just rambled off a bunch of random stuff that maybe makes sense to people listening or not. Any of your favorite things come to mind?
I mean, most people don't understand what it takes. Like, most people who aren't interested in this kind of thing don't understand what it takes. I'm including my wife. She just can't understand how it could cost $100 million to make a movie. And granted, yes, a big chunk of that goes to your talent, as it should, because if your talent isn't good, then nothing else matters. It could look great, it could sound fantastic, and all the things could be perfect. But if you have bad acting, it's kind of a non-starter. But then, yeah, to your point, and I've had to make that clear to my bosses sometimes when we talk about how much things cost when we do like on-set production. There's a project that we're going to do for Lumen that's like $100,000, and my boss was thinking, like, asked me why, and she's not in the video world. She's more into the social world. So I had to make it clear, like, look, the same thing you said, like, look, it's not an issue of just quality. It's an issue of like making sure you have somebody who is an expert in that thing, doing that thing. So, because if you have one person who is directing, but that person is also, being a gaffer, then that person is not technically directing. That person has to be doing multiple things, and that hurts the production in every single way. So, it's unless you're in it, it's hard to really understand that kind of thing. Why do you need somebody just for this? Well, because you've got other people who are dedicated to this other thing. And if they take their eye off the ball on that, because they, oh, so-and-so needs a coffee, so the sound guy's got to go run to do that. Well, what if something happens and he bumps, while he's getting coffee, he bumps his machine and something goes wrong? Like, he shouldn't be having to worry about coffee. He should be worrying about audio, and that's it. So anyway, point being, I totally get it. And it's really easy for dollars to rack up because of that. And that's why, films cost what they cost. Like, at least, blockbuster films. Now, that being said, you can get away. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't make stuff because you don't have the money. Yeah. Right? you know, I've seen some interviews with Quentin Tarantino where, you know, he talks about just get the best people, you know, like 2 years in. It's like, yeah, F you, Quentin. Like, nobody has the money for the best people. Nobody has the money for people. So, you know, like, yeah, great advice. The best advice would be all the people. You know, it's the Nolan style. Understand everything that everyone is doing so that you can, when you do have the budget and you do have the ability and you are able to get those people, you understand what those people do, their role, how to advise them if there's something that feels off or wrong, or if you have an idea, you know, how to speak to the sound person, how to speak to the wardrobe person, the hair person, of what the character is going through. No, their hair needs to be a little bit more disheveled. You know, I think we need to add some product or whatever it might be. You know, but you can't understand that unless you've done all of those things. So I really firmly believe the best advice is do all the things, be all the people first, and then when you have the budget, pay those people to do it. You know, you can also call in favors at times. You know, if you're working in the industry a long time like you have, you probably know a lot of people. You could call in a favor and say, hey, look, I'll get you on these other gigs. I got some other things going on. Can you come in for this project and just hook it up? And usually, not always, but usually, if that person is not working, they will usually do it. They will usually say, okay, cool. I actually had a cancellation this day. Let's go ahead and do that or whatever, because they know that they want to be able to be on the top of your list for your next project, you know? So anyway.
Yeah. And the old rule is one for the meal, one for the reel. The idea is obviously you need to get paid and make sure you're paying your bills and making a living. But if you're trying to advance, how are you only ever going to do that if you never do anything for free? Like you have to pick those carefully. Like you can't just be doing everything for free. Maybe if you're just starting out and you're literally just trying to get some reps in and experience, of course, that's what internships for, you know, and passion projects, build your portfolio any way you can early on. But at some point you do need to make a living. But even as you're doing that, it goes back to your comment about Quentin Tarantino. Like, yeah, of course you want the best people. Like when you have $40 million to drop on a project, you can get a lot of those best people with $40 million and being Quentin Tarantino. At that point, people will take a pay cut to work with you and make your budget work. Whereas maybe I would need $75 million to get all those same people working on my stuff because they're like, who the hell is that guy? But therefore, early on, maybe you don't get the most experienced first AC. Maybe you get a second AC who wants to work into that position. And therefore, there might be some bumps and bruises, but you got someone either working for very cheap or for free whose heart is invested in this because they care about doing a good job and learning and improving their craft and also working into that position. And maybe you can't get, you know, the best DP in the world, but maybe you can get a first AC or a gaffer who's trying to work their way into cinematography. And, you know, you've seen some of their work and they're like, okay, we can come together and make the sum better than the whole of the parts, right? Like you can find ways to make something, your vision, come to reality by giving other people opportunities in the same way that you're wanting an opportunity that I am, you know, to build my career and my portfolio up. Like, okay, well, let's just work with people who are trying to make a name or trying to build their portfolio up. And that's how you can kind of get the best of both worlds. There's always a way to work the system if you understand what the system is and everyone's motives. And that goes into understanding it's okay to be a little selfish and a little greedy if that's helping you motivate other people to get what they want, allowing them to be a little selfish and a little greedy. And now we can kind of together collaborate and get what we both want. Like if the only motivation is to only get what you want, yeah, you can go to hell. Like,
that's not what this is.
That's not what this is.
What we're making.
It's mutually beneficial. And that's okay for everyone to win. I think that's what makes for a really good partnership and a really good, trade is we both win. it may feel like you're getting the best, but whenever they feel the same way, that's a win-win. That's the literal definition of a win-win. And that's all we're really thinking about when we're talking about all the things that go behind creating anything. So I think that's really cool that, we get to do this, and that ultimately we're building something that we love and that we care about, because not everyone gets to do that. And so it's definitely a privilege, and I'm excited about that. Like, there's some sacrifices that we make to make it work. But at the same time, the rewards are really freaking cool. So, I'm glad to be on this journey with you, buddy.
We live in an incredible age where, like, you could literally make a movie on your phone. You could. I'm not telling people to go do that, but
people do.
Go do it. Sure, why not?
People do. Soderbergh did it, and Tangerine, God, I'm forgetting his name right now, was shot on his cell phone, but they did it in a way that speaks to the film that they were making. So if you care and you work it, there's no reason you can't make an actual movie on your cell phone that has some success and elevates your career. Yeah.
Yeah, but there is a reason why movies cost what they cost. There are 100. That's why we talk about. Honestly, I'll say this, and we can get into the review. But that's why we talk about this all the time. Is like, it is incredible that any movie ever gets made. It is like building a bridge. It's the best way I could describe it. When you look at a bridge, when I drive into San Francisco and I drive over the Golden Gate Bridge, I'm in awe every single time. There is never a time I see basically any bridge, but especially a bridge like that, where I'm not just completely floored that is a thing, that got made and it's still standing, and I'm driving my car over it along with hundreds of other people at the same time. And there are giant boats going underneath me. It is unbelievable. And it took thousands of people doing one tiny thing to the best possible ability, to their best ability, every single step of the way to make that happen. You take 5 or 10 people out of the equation, maybe that bridge doesn't get built, or it gets built and it's faulty and it falls or something. The same thing, I mean, it's less important, but it's the same thing for a movie. You need everyone who is specifically good at the best at this thing to do that thing. That's it. Don't dilute it by asking them to do a million or like 2 other things. You say, I need you to come and I need you to do hair and makeup for 4 people every day. That's it. I don't want you to go get coffee. I don't want you to look at the sound. I don't want you to look at the sound, whatever. I don't want you to do anything. Just that. And if you take that person out, now there is not synchronicity from day to day, like you said earlier, like making sure that the hair looks good today, the same as it did yesterday, because we're in the same setting or whatever, all these things. And all of a sudden things start to hurt. So yes, it takes 150 different people, to make something, to make something like a Nolan film, You can't make a Nolan film. You cannot make a Nolan film on a cell phone with 2 people.
Right.
And I'm sure that at some point, maybe in 10 years, 20 years, he's going to try to do that. Right. He's just going to prove me wrong. But sometimes things cost $150 million because you need that many people. So anyway,
as soon as cell phones can run film through the gate.
Right. Exactly. As soon as cell phones can run IMAX film, 70 millimeter through the gate, they're going to use one. And who knows, maybe in 10 years they might. 10 years they'll be in your head. So
that idea puts a smile on my face.
Oh, nice.
What are we covering today, bro?
Today we are covering Smile 2, which as of this recording is out in theaters. If you haven't seen this film, please pause this episode and go watch it. We are going to spoil a bunch of stuff, and we don't want to do that to you.
Yeah, we'll look at a bunch of things. Definitely touch on like cinematography, editing, and sound. Jump scares. We'll also dive a little bit into the story and writing, theme, maybe, exposition, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. Global pop sensation Skye Riley experiences terrifying and inexplicable events. Overwhelmed by the escalating horrors and the pressures of fame, Skye is forced to face her past. Written, directed by Parker Finn. Cinematography by Charlie Sarroff. Featuring Naomi Scott as Skye Riley, Rosemarie DeWitt as Elizabeth Riley, Miles Gutierrez-Riley as Joshua, Peter Jacobson as Morris, and Dylan Gelula as Gemma.
Nice. No soundbite. It was all very loud things.
Screams.
Yeah.
Bangs, explosions.
Yeah, right.
Or crashes, I guess.
Nice. So, yeah, I know we didn't really set out to cover this. But I was like, it's in theaters. Todd's already seen it, so let's just chalk it up as our final October scare film. And so what was your experience? I assume you just kind of randomly showed up to the theater and was like, yeah, whatever, I'll see this. And what unfolded for you?
So I thought, you know what, I want to go see a movie, and I was going to go planning on seeing Saturday Night, but then I saw that, it's a Thursday night, and Smile 2 just came out, and I just recently watched Smile 1 because I just had never seen it before. And let me preface all of this with, I've never been a scary movie person. I just haven't really liked them. I don't like being scared. But lately I've been all about scary movies. I'm searching them out. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on. There's something's happening with me.
Something
primal. And I don't know what it is, Wes. But I'm really finding joy in
some really dark shit, man.
Yeah. I'm really finding joy in them. I think maybe because of this podcast and just being able to, I think maybe watching Evil Dead and those episodes changed something. Now I'm able to look at scary films a little bit differently. Like the making of them and maybe the meaning of them, if there is that. If not, no worries. But just as enjoyable, right? And so when I saw that it was out, I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll go do that. Had very little expectation, at all. I just thought, okay, they're just making it because the first one, did pretty well. I think it did well because it was all over the place. Just
it did well.
Yeah. And I avoided it. I didn't watch it. I avoided the hell out of it. I was like, oh, that looks creepy. No. And then finally watched it. And so now I walk in and I'm thinking, whatever. And I absolutely loved it. I thought that Naomi Scott, okay, so there was nobody in the theater. There were 3 or 4 people in the theater. And it opens with her, her as just saying, thank you for coming and da-da-da. We can't wait for you to see it and everything. And I'm thinking, it's me and 3 people. That felt a little awkward to me. Those kinds of things.
Did y'all look at each other
yeah, this is awkward, weird. Those kind of things I felt are reserved for Top Gun,
right. The marquee
Tom Cruise
events.
movie, where it's going to be full, and he's talking to 150 people, but she's talking to 4 people, and I'm like, this is awkward and weird, not a good start. But I put that aside because it's not actually part of the movie.
Yeah.
And then it got going, and I thought that I thought it was fantastic. I thought she was amazing in this movie. She was terrified all the time. And not only was she terrified, but the escalation of the fear was great as well. It started off with her at fear-wise, when she was scared, at an 8. She was just scared. And I thought, well, where do you have to go from here? How does this, but it did escalate for sure. And and the jump scares were fantastic, I thought. I used to hate jump scares, and I still kind of do, but when I see them coming and I'm still scared, they're done right. They're hard to do, they're hard to do well. You have to use sound, you have to use hard cuts, and whatever is on screen has to be so jarring that you just jump. I jumped 7 times in this movie. It just got me so many times. But the headiness of it was what I loved, where you don't know what's real and what's not real. When her friend comes over and sleeps over and she's laying next to her and then she does the whole smile thing. And then Skye wakes up and it's the next day and she's holding the kombucha or whatever it is that she's holding. She's like, no, and then, but then was she ever really there? It was very heady, which I loved. Also, the thing that's really hard with a film like this is that, for me, is that the balance between her being a famous person and being on stage doing music and not overdoing that, right? It's so easy to just be on stage with her because, oh, look, she's this big star and have her performing and showing her how awesome she is. Even they had a kind of a longer scene of her doing that, where she thought that she fell and broke her leg. Mm-hmm. That scene was probably the longest I remember her being on stage, where we're just showing her performing. But even that, I thought that the cinematography was really well done, to where, you felt like you were watching you were part of this thing happening. It wasn't like can we cut away? Now I was like in it. And then, and so I thought that they balanced her performing pretty well with the actual film itself and being a narrative piece, instead of like, we're on stage because at some point she's going to think she broke her leg. We need to be here with her on stage for a while. It can't be we're on here for 10 seconds and then that happens. There has to be some kind of buildup for that. And I thought that they did that really well. I thought the runtime was good too. I thought that, it doesn't, I guess I don't know his name. Who, her boyfriend?
Oh, Paul Hudson. Yeah.
That's Jack Nicholson's son.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right? You didn't know, but now when you look at him, you're like, oh yeah. Go back and look at him. He looks exactly like him. His smile is exactly like him. And he said in an interview that he talked to his dad about it, and his dad was basically told him, like, just don't overdo it, But I thought he was on screen very little when I knew that going into the movie, that he was Jack Nicholson's son. And I'd seen that interview of him saying that. So I was like waiting to see him, and we barely see him. He's in the scene where she's presenting on stage and she kind of freaks out and he stands up and smiles and walks up to her. And then he's in the scene in the car where she pulls the steering wheel and then they crash. And I thought he did a fantastic job. I think all the acting was really great in this film.
Yeah.
And then it goes to this really dark place in the end. You just don't know where you're at the whole time. If this is real, if it's not real. I thought, honestly, for me, I thought it was a step up for the first one. I thought the first one was really great. But this was another level. And in closing, I like that I was worried because they went to this famous person having this thing happen, that they were going to play it 100% on her fame. And it was less about her fame and more about her going through this thing and dealing with this thing, as opposed to like the pressures of fame for me. And I don't want to talk about the first one too much, but she doesn't go discover all of this. It's this new, because how that would be like retelling. It was this new kind of like way of her dealing with this, with this guy contacting her, and her trying to figure out, is this real? Where did this come from? Anyway, I thought it was fantastic. I loved it.
Nice.
I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a mix of all kinds of things, because on the one hand, like my first viewing. So I watched the first one in theaters because everyone was talking about it, and I would say I liked 90% of that, and then the ending felt a little bit like run of the mill.
I wasn't sure if we were supposed to talk about the first one, so I was kind of holding off. But
basically, like spoiler, alert for the first Smile as well, just to be safe. Because I think the thing that I appreciated about the first one was the element of letting the monster, represent some kind of psychological issue, right? This was about, an idea about self-healing, if I remember correctly. I haven't watched it since it was in theater, so, correct me if I'm butchering some of this.
Yeah.
But that was kind of what I remember, right? He had to go home and revisit some of his past in order to heal, in order to kind of exorcise that demon. And in order to do that, he had to like burn down this memory, and that was kind of what got him out, which leads directly into the opening of this film, right? Because he gets into, that's our first frame is, this medium close up on Joel, our survivor, and it's like 6 days later, and that goes into this whole, wonder, and then they show like the burning person like on his left. That if you can't remember what happened in the first one, that seems like a really random detail. Like, what the hell is that? And then everything just kind of moves along. And so, so on the one hand, like, I think my first viewing, because I watched Smile 2 mostly twice. My first viewing was like, okay, yeah, this was definitely much stronger of a film than the first one, and I wouldn't say I liked it. There were some things that bugged me, but I was jumping. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and lie and act like I wasn't affected. Like, that opening alone, when he gets hit by the car, like, I literally jumped the shit out of my seat. Like, my leg. Me
too,
dude. It would have looked like whenever you see a dog having a dream and he just suddenly starts like moving, that was me in my seat. Like, my legs shook, like, and I sat up and I started laughing. I was like, did anybody see that?
So I want you to keep going, but I have a question for you too.
All right.
Like, cause I did too. I had no idea, and it came out of nowhere, and I jumped out of my seat, and I kind of looked around like, did you ladies see that? Anyway, the jump scares didn't feel cheap to me. They felt like motivated. Like, I should have seen that. He's running across the street.
Yeah.
I should have known or expected maybe a car to come hit him, but it was just done in such a way where it scared the crap out of me. Did you feel that way, or did you feel that they were cheap?
Mix. I thought most of them were cheap, and then some of them were really, really good. Like that one, I have a mixture of feelings. It works so well because just as you're getting the idea that he's going to get hit by a car, the car was already hitting him. Like, it happened. I think this is my confusion with this movie is, on the one hand, I thought this was entirely built on jump scares, and that like pisses me off as someone who loves horror films. But the thing that confuses me is they're executed so well that it's like, you know what? I can't help but tip my hat. Like, and so here's the thing is that there's two types of like horror films. There's the elevated, like, this is just cream of the, crop, your Hereditaries and The Witch, and then there's that secondary tier that I think still has layers to it. Like, I would say It Follows is at the very top of this other tier. Like, it's not in the realm of, The Witch, of course, but it's still so good. The story is so well told, and the idea that they're using in there is just so smart and so thoroughly executed. And then I would say towards the bottom of the second tier is something like this, that is like, I think the story needs so much work and I'll dive into that in a little bit, but the execution is so good that it puts it head and tail. Like, if you're going to watch a horror movie just for the thrills, this is the one to go to. Like, you're going to have a really fun night, if you get all your friends together and huddle around the TV, kill the lights, and just sit and be scared together. This is the go-to. Like, this is going to give you all the action that you want. And this is that movie. Like, so it's hard for me to really hate on it too much, just because the thing that he's trying to do, he's doing all the way. And I would compare this to the other kinds of horror films in this category would be, it's even hard to like a Scream, for instance. Like Scream isn't the perfect analogy because it's not gore, but like Hostel, like I would put kind of in this category. All those Eli Roth gore films are very much in this area, and this is just beating the hell out of those movies. Like because there's the gore and there's the jump scares, but the execution is so above and beyond of what those other films are doing. Those other films are just kind of more annoying, and they're like, okay, I get what we're doing here, and here comes the next thing where whatever, someone gets their face knocked off or whatever. It's like, okay, I see it coming, and I'm going to look away just because I don't want to see that, and it'll get to me a little bit. This, it's like sometimes you know it's coming, but most of the time you don't, and the execution, it's just so good. It's in that way, it's the perfect horror movie, because I think just because I think the jump scares are cheap doesn't mean they're not really fun. Like if you're there for that, this is all you need. So I have a lot of respect for what they did. I think all the things that bummed me out were more story related. I think like, okay, if Wes isn't happy here, it's really just a Wes problem.
Well, what are those?
Okay. So like, I would say the exposition, needs. Hold on. Before I get into that, I guess I want to double down on some of the other things that you said, because movies about pop stars, really hard to do. Like, how often do they just come off as cheap and forced? And this isn't that. Like, I completely bought into Skye Riley, because they didn't overly sell it. Like, they give you a couple clips on TV, and she shuts it off. She's like, I don't want to indulge in this. Like, I don't want to remember those things. All the elements of her stardom are really well hidden. Like, we're in a rehearsal, and it's just this small room that they're doing a rehearsal in, with their backup dancers. And you have people kind of doting on her, but they're writing that line really well. You have the mom, who's also kind of the stagecoach whipping, her into position. And, there's that tension there, mother-daughter stardom tension. And Naomi Scott, fantastic. I'm excited to see her in other films. Like, I think she probably has the goods just based on what she was doing here. I think maybe it was just good directing. The writing is solid enough, but I think all the performances are elevating the hell out of this writing. Like, Naomi Scott elevated the hell out of Skye Riley. I thought Miles Gutierrez-Riley as the assistant, I thought he was amazing. I thought he was so excellent. Like, there's so many moments where I'm like whenever she thinks he destroyed her room, and she comes out and she starts screaming at him, and he just kind of laughs like, what? Like, he's trying to play along, but then he's like genuinely confused. Brilliant, performance on his part, man. I was just floored.
Well, and the line right after where he's basically like, I would never, like, I remember that line and how he delivered it because I believed him. Like, of course he would never. Yeah, come on, Skye. Anyway.
Absolutely. Like, so I thought all of the casting just served so well of each role. So really well cast. And I think a big part of the casting too, especially with those supporting actors, seem to be based on their smiles alone. Like, okay, we need to find a great actor, but also that their smile works for it. And that's a weird thing to cast for, but they nailed it. Like, the girl with the braces obviously has to stay on the entire time. And I thought she was fantastic. I got really excited about Peter Jacobson. I see you highlighting him there. He was Morris, the ER nurse, that guy that comes out of nowhere, which gets into some of my rubs. But I get really excited about that guy. I think he's a terrific actor and doesn't get used enough. And I'm so bad with faces. I was like, oh man, that would be really cool if that was Taub. Like, he plays Taub in House in later seasons. And I was like, but that would be really cool if that was him. And then the more the scene unfolded, I was like, oh, that is him. This is just to reiterate, I'm really bad at faces. Up until the movie started, I thought Skye Riley was actually Lady Gaga.
Oh no, I get it.
I was like,
she has that vibe.
She literally had to come on and be like, I'm Skye Riley, or I'm Naomi Scott. I was like, oh.
Well, you all, I'm gonna forgive you a little bit because Joker just came out whole smile thing going on. And then the poster of Smile 2 has the smile. And so you can't really see her whole face on the poster. And she looks exactly like, because it's covering her mouth, she does look like Lady Gaga. So on the poster. Okay. So I forgive you a little bit on that.
Thankfully. Okay, good. Thank you. I got bailed out. I'll take it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just really well cast. But the use of Morris is one of those things that bummed me out, because he just kind of shows up, 2/3 of the way in. This random exposition about, in my notes, I called it like a Deus exposition machina. like who is this guy coming out of nowhere to give us all the information that we need? Like, he discovers Skye randomly and knows all about this demon. He's been tracking it and all the things that happen, and here's how it operates. Like, that is completely unearned. And just, we need to make sure the audience knows this. I don't know if this is like a studio note or something. I don't think it is. I think it was an opportunity to introduce a potential victory for Skye, and saying, we have a way to now defeat this monster before you kind of pull that rug at the end, which also gets into another thing that really bummed me out, which is the rules. There doesn't seem to be a really good use of rules. And for me, horror films are all about the rules. And seeing, one of the first rules that we establish is we see the host kill someone and you become infected. It's like, okay, I kind of get, and that gets confirmed by Morris, the ER nurse. And then beyond that, there's really no rules. They just kind of do whatever they want. Like, there's no reality testing. There's no way to know when your reality is infected. And so you go through that whole segment with Gemma, and then at the end just gets revealed that, she's not really there, and everything she's experiencing was fake. And it seemed like this entire movie was built around the opening and closing, and everything in between was just kind of maximum audience experience, which I guess, again, makes for a really fun horror film. I don't want to poo all over that, but for me, as someone walking away from this film, whenever you start dancing around the idea that it was all a dream or it was all in your head, it's very dicey. It can work. And to some degree, I would say it really did work here, because you get that really fun, amazing ending, and leads into questions about Smile 3, which we'll definitely come back to here in a minute. But I get really just bummed about okay, is there no way to really, and that leads me into questions about the theme of this film. What is exactly the conversation piece around this? Is it the burden of fame? Is it about substance abuse? Because, we see all these burdens of fame, right? Dealing with the fans. And I love that whole sequence with Alfredo, right? This soft-spoken, sweet, but scary looking guy. And he gets really intense and starts acting creepy. And then she imagines him attacking her. I imagine those are things pop stars really deal with, internally, trying to balance being kind and gracious to the people who made you possible, while also trying to retain your sense of self and boundaries. That's a really, and I love that they dance around that so well in this movie. And so, but then you also have her dealing with her substance abuse, which I think goes back to the whole idea of stardom and trying to deal as a person, dealing with fame and being in front of millions of people, and having that level of pressure of expectations, and also living up to that with the people around you, because now you are also a meal ticket for everyone in your life. And how do you deal with that? And so her therapist gives her the whole, I drink water, and that becomes a really fun, what the hell? She is downing that water. And visually, and it becomes another and very cool, immersive thing that hits the audience. Oh my God. Because that's just an in-camera thing that she has to do. But the thing that rubs me about that is the whole point of it. She drinks water when she gets the impulse to use or drink, as a form of acknowledging what she can and can't control. That should be a tool of her reality testing. And throughout all that time, she kind of does that, and it never gets her any results. And so it feels like a cheap tactic that is either underutilized or just kind of thrown away. Like you introduce this element that you're not actually using to any meaningful effect, other than like it's a squishy moment for the audience. That rubs me. I feel like you were going to make a comment about the fame or stardom or.
Oh well, I just have. I mean, I don't think that Morris, the Peter Jacobson person, exists. I don't think he was real. I think he came out of nowhere because he wasn't real. And then to the water thing, I think it would work if she wasn't infected with this creature or this demon, right? Like it's a thing, it's a tool for her when she feels like she wants to use, but now it's not, of course it's not going to work because this thing has infected her mind, and it's actually infected our mind as viewers, which is why we're never going to get told if anything is real or not, which is why it feels so messy and like broken. And we're, everything that's happening when Gemma is driving her to Long Island or whatever it is, wherever they're going, to meet with Morris, there's, we're expecting that that's real, but then we find out, oh, it's not real. Okay. But then at the end, is Morris even real? He leaves the room. He never comes back. Would a person actually do that? I don't know.
Yeah, that part is definitely clearly established as fake, but the other part isn't as well established in terms of they effectively say that. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's part of my issue is it's so murky that how is the audience supposed to walk away understanding exactly what happened in this movie? You're not, like, and that's my rub.
I just assumed that nothing was real.
Yeah.
I just assumed that it was all in her, like everything was in her head because this demon was effing with her the entire time, like, and
sure.
then, oh, the other thing I was going to say was that to your point about fame, or the meaning of it, when she finds out from Morris that she has to die she has to kill herself or whatever, she has to die in order for this thing to die or to not hurt anybody else. She's beside her. She's like, there's no way I'm going to do that. But after she kills her mom, she literally kills her mom, she realizes, I don't want anyone else to get hurt. And she makes the decision to die in order for this thing to not hurt anybody else. She even says it out loud. So maybe that's part of it, of like self-sacrifice,
maybe,
or learning self-sacrifice, or maybe there's nothing and it's just like an interesting story.
Yeah.
That's true.
Because at the end of the day, she literally does not kill her mom. Like that was all part of the fantasy as well. Like that's
she does.
No, she doesn't.
Oh, she doesn't. Alive. That's right. Right. Exactly. So what was real?
Exactly. Well, that's my point is they demonstrate levels of this is fake and this isn't. And then it's like an Inception level, like there's a third layer because that whole sequence with killing her mom was in itself supposed to be a deception. Right. Like her mom killed herself in front of her and then she realizes, no, it was me the whole time. And then to now be like, oh, now even that wasn't real either. That feels very cheap to me. I think that's my problem is you walk away from this and saying like it was all everything between the opening and the closing, is up for grabs. And that's a very unsatisfying like storyteller for me. I don't trust Parker Finn anymore as a storyteller. But thematically, I'm still trying to like, okay, but is there something else? Like, fine, let's just throw all that away. Very well. But is there something else we can put our digits into? And like, okay, like her back pain, right? She can't even get that medicated because of having a user history. So is this like a comment about medical care for recovering addicts because being in fame, and then having this wreck because of being in fame, she was also coked out and, doing all these drugs. And that probably contributed to her acting like a crazy person and getting her boyfriend killed. And all the ramifications of that, kind of now she can't even treat her actual pain because of her user history. And is this a flaw in the medical system, or is this speaking more to the issues of being a famous person that can no longer operate on any level as a normal person? I don't know. But all the other elements about fame and how that's impacting her ability to stay sane is also interesting. Like, I love that there are things that I love and hate on the writing level. I'll say that. Like, I love, she's forced to go to the charity event that she's clearly not equipped to do right now. And she resists really, really well with her mom. Like, that's a fight that they have. And her mom at the end of the day is like, you have to go. We have investors and you don't have to do anything. You just show up, read, and leave. Like, this is the easiest win in the world. And it eventually shuts her up. I love that, resistance and being forced to go. It adds tension, it adds sympathy. And I think it is also speaking to the theme of stardom, being forced to do things, even though you're not in a mental position to handle this right now. Like, no one actually cares about your well-being. And to that end, like in the recovery ward before she kills her mom is still planning to get her to go on tour. Like, we have makeup. We can cover that up. Oh, we have plugs. Well, no one will notice. And it's like, that's all really gross. And you can absolutely imagine that stuff happening to people. It's like, and she calls herself a dancing monkey. I don't have it in me to right now play dancing monkey, for a bunch of investors or whatever. And so it's speaking to those elements. And I think that also gets into the ending. Like, whenever you look at that first frame, last frame is opening on Joel and ends on the audience reaction and Skye dead from the microphone. I think that's all playing, well, maybe not all, but that ending frame is clearly playing on the idea of, killing yourself for your audience, and kind of this dehumanizing effect that fame and stardom had on her. She, at the end of the day, no longer felt like a real person in control of her life. And to that end, that's about as far as my generosity can go in terms of like turning this story into some interesting thematic element. I would argue it's not necessarily well executed thematically, even if all the horror stuff is freaking amazing. Like, there's so many things he's doing well. Like, I love the whole Louis Fergoli sequence where he's dead and now she's debating what to do, right? She picks up her phone, she dials 911, and then she stops. She looks around and surveys the scene and then doesn't call, right? That whole little sequence is great visual storytelling to communicate a conscious decision of what she's thinking and feeling without her ever actually having to say a word. Those are some of the harder moments to communicate sometimes, of like someone choosing to not do something can be really hard to say without getting just badly into, corny exposition, where that just beautifully, simply demonstrated she's not making a good decision. And then throughout the film, there's a lot of dramatic pauses to let a moment develop. Right, the actor freezes, whether that's Skye or someone else, Skye, and that dramatic stop. And maybe they look around. Normally they don't. They just kind of freeze. And then maybe the camera can now move and the music can slowly build. Like, on the day, it probably feels awkward. And in the edit, it probably even feels awkward until you have all these other elements around it that suddenly adds up to this moment. Because this is all motivating some kind of jump scare by building tension through that anticipation, right? The edit oftentimes is just flawlessly catching the viewer off guard. And it's just so good because they are establishing some kind of rhythm that the edit then disrupts, either through like a delayed timing or an early timing, like that sequence in the bathroom in the dark with Alfredo on the other end of the hallway. Like, we hang on that for a hot minute.
Dude,
and then he sprints. Like, that's a dope ass, like, edit, everything. All the execution there is flawless. The lighting is just enough to make out a fraction of his body. It's like a little highlight on his hair, and then he falls immediately into shadow. Just enough to see who that is.
and then for her running to the door and then opening it and Gemma's there and that's the scare, but you're relieved at the same time, you know, because you're like, oh, somebody else is there. Thank God, you know, and the guy's gone. You're great job pointing that out because that whole sequence was so fantastic. Was that the one where it started with the glass breaking? So she's playing piano and the glass, that whole thing of her playing piano and then because I'm with her playing piano and singing, I'm relaxed. She could just be sitting there or reading or maybe like watching something on her phone and I'm not relaxed at all. But because she's performing or she's being creative, she's doing her outlet, I'm relaxed with her. And then it just kind of goes to a 10 eventually.
Yeah, to a 10. And I love, before she starts playing, she takes a hit of water and sets it down. And then we do that nice slow push in on the water. So that's lingering in the back of her head. Something's up with that water. And then, she goes and plays and we start to relax a bit. And then finally we hear the glass break. And then we're back on edge like, okay, what's happening now? Because in this universe, really anything can happen. Like a monster could come out of the corner. Someone could show up. Yeah, we literally have no idea where they're going to take us next. And that's nice. I think the other thing I wish, and I think this could have been something that maybe played more into like thematically, are the kills I thought could have been more meaningful. Like in the beginning, Joel dies by a car, you know, and it works as the jump scare that it's intended to be, but it doesn't really communicate anything else. Like you get that blood smear that turns into the smile. And that's cool. Like there's so many visual things that are happening that are just there to add visual interest. Like all the upside down shots don't really speak anything to me. It feels kind of blah, but it looks cool and it's a fun ride. Why not? And I think making this kind of movie makes total sense. Like just keep it visually interesting. Let's keep, the audience engaged, because why not? Like Lewis dies by the gym weight bashing his face in. Why? I think the most generous you could do is like, that's the weight of stardom creeping up or something. I don't know. But it looks hella horrific, the guy ripping off his jaw is pretty horrific. All those elements are pretty scary. I think cinematography wise, excellent. Wide angle close-ups feel awkward, super off-putting. So many close-ups hide what could be just out of frame. That's all playing really well into this universe of you don't know what's going to be next, and therefore the closer you can get, the easier it is to jump to a new frame and reveal something. So constricting information to let it be revealed whenever you want it to. Like this probably took a lot of time working with his DP to say, how are we executing this scene and this sequence and this sequence? Like those edits are pre-built, probably 90%. And then the editor's going in and polishing the hell out of that. Like on the one hand, probably a really easy gig for the editor. On the other hand, a nightmare, because like there's so much fine tuning and polishing that he's got to bring to the scene that it doesn't just happen magically. Just because you shot it this way doesn't necessarily mean it's going to pan out that way. You got to make sure that it's all landing properly in sync with the sound design and the music and blah, blah, blah.
I have a question. Because you were just talking about polishing and stuff like jump scares and everything. Do they need to shoot stuff like this in a higher frame rate because maybe something happens between frames if you're just at 24? You know what I mean? So like you can, you can only edit here or here, and there's a space in between. It's not like, in audio I could zoom into a single waveform, but like in video I can only zoom in based on the frame rate, either the beginning of this frame or the beginning of the next one. So do they shoot some of this maybe in 30 or in 60 even, so that they can, and then slow it down so you can edit more fine-tunedly for a jump scare like that?
I don't think so. I think a lot of it is just going to be maximizing like one frame at a time. Like the sound does so much to carry all those jumps that it probably feels much quicker than it actually is. And some of that is also the mix. Like I hated this mix. Like as just someone who struggles with what's the word?
Stimulation?
Yes, being overstimulated. Like this, the first time I got through it just fine, and I walked out on my second viewing once I felt like I had enough notes. I was like, I gotta go. I hated it. Like my first viewing in this was like, okay, that was a mostly fun experience. There's a few moments where I could have done without. The second viewing was a terror for me. Like I was miserable, and part of that too is probably I didn't have any popcorn. I ate popcorn to help drown out unwanted noises in a movie, and I was meeting someone for dinner last night, and so I was like, I want to save my appetite, and so I didn't eat popcorn. Maybe that contributed to the extra stimulation that I wasn't able to dial down. But then on top of that, the sound mix is wildly maxed out. Like the compression that they're running in there is just pushing everything to peak levels. And so, yeah, to your point, like I think all that fine tuning is mostly through the sound and the mix, and very little through like controlling a very specific like point in the frame to that degree that you're suggesting, which is a really fascinating idea. I'm going to admit, like, I wonder what this might be something I just tinker to see what it looks like, to take a 24 frame timeline and drop it into like a 60 frame timeline that adds new edits. And then like, what happens if you start editing things between some of those 20? I don't know. Maybe it's weird and mushy, but maybe you can do something else cool within that. I have no idea, but I'm super fascinated now for sure. But yeah, so I will say that opening oneer is like freaking dope. On the one hand, in a lot of ways, I have two like drawbacks. So I was like, I don't know about that, but there's so many holes in that building. It's a ratty building, right? All of these holes allow light all over the place, and I think that allows for you to keep the camera moving wherever you want while still maintaining a lot of depth of light, right? This upstage lighting that gives you shadow on the camera side, so that it just is going to look really, really pleasing. And all those holes, right? So like they're on the wall, but then there's times when we move the camera so that we're looking into the unwindowed side of the building. And they have like holes above him though, that let in light just enough to create that sense of depth. It's really wonderful stagecraft in all kinds of ways. And I think there's probably also some manual timing, whether that's while they're moving the camera, someone flags off some of those holes in the wall to stop letting light in. Because if you think about moving your camera between a light source and your subject, you're just going to see the camera man and operator and the boom operator all casting their shadows onto your subject. And you never see any of that. And they're moving the camera around all those light sources. And so I'm thinking they're doing some either manual timing on like a DMX switch so that they can dial in or dial down and move stuff back up as the camera moves around, or they're just having someone manually slowly flag it off. But I think the DMX is probably the easier way to control that stuff. And DMX is just kind of a system that allows you to electronically control light source input and output. Yeah, and you can run something like Blackout, or if you're cheap like me, Sidus Link. Yeah, and so very cool though. I mean, they blocked that. That was clearly all just very well blocked according to maximizing like the immersion that they're trying to get out of that opening sequence. Because after like the first 60 seconds, once you get inside that building, you really are leaning forward. Like, what is happening? And then he starts stabbing him and guns start blazing. But that kind of led into like, this is not decision. Like, he doesn't grab the gun. He sees these guys about to rush in, and he doesn't reach for the weapon. Okay, that's a little strange, but he's in a rush. And then he stops. He kicks out the AC, and then he stops and watches them bust down the door before jumping out the window. That kind of bummed me out.
Like every stupid movie when they do that.
Yeah.
Drives me nuts. Just jump out the damn window.
Just jump out the window. And I get like the intention there is to allow time for the cam op to get through the window and back out to now be tracking from the front of Joel as he's running, trying to make an escape, that then we can hide the reveal of the car coming and all that stuff. I get it, but you need to block that better so that the character is more appropriately motivated. Not just to randomly sit and watch my death come through that door. Like, give him something else to do there. Like, I don't care if it's maybe blocking more stuff, like, and trying to do something, be active in his, escape. I don't know. Yeah. The other stuff that I thought they were executing really well, very quick notes here. Like, the smiles, always, that's making this movie on that front alone, very tricky. Because someone smiling, is corny, on one hand. It can be very silly and played out very quickly. You're like, I'm supposed to be scared of someone smiling, but the execution is where he makes his money. Like, someone smiles, right, and you get that boom, whom, right? All this thing kind of just enters the audio landscape, and then you couple that with the reaction from Skye, from Naomi Scott. Like, her reacting is also selling it. And then the actor who's smiling, of course, is doing it without smiling with their eyes. They're opening their eyes wider, right? And then they're not moving at all. And they're just maximizing the awkwardness. And so you kind of combine all those elements, and it suddenly feels very off-putting. The camera is wide-angled and very close and awkwardly framed. And the audio, the reaction, the performance, like, it's all just cohesive and just beautifully, beautifully done. And then tons, and these are the gifts and curses of me as a viewer, I guess. Like, the jump scares and kind of cheap thrills that rub me the wrong way. Like, I hate love it, the pulling her hair out. Like, it's very loud, and like, they're using that sound effect, and then some of the time, like, they're adding her screaming, like, just freaking out and screaming at the top of her lungs. And throughout the film, they do a lot of this kind of thing where if they're not doing a jump scare, they're doing like a lot to agitate the viewer, right? The buzzing phone, the hair pulling, the brush stuck in the hair and you're pulling it out, and it's like kind of that nightmare we all have. Like, if you've ever had long hair and you're trying to run a comb or a brush through it and it's not sticking, you're like, I don't want to pull it out. And so they're playing on, very common fears. And then the scary cuts of people screaming or doing something dramatic, like her. I really hated the her screaming in the car wreck, in that aftermath. Seeing my God. That was just interesting the first viewing, and actual like anger the second viewing. I was just not here for it the second viewing.
It's hard to watch that just once, much less twice.
So I don't know. I think that's kind of the overall impression, if you will, of my love and hate of the film. Like, the execution, masterful. I think personally, Parker Finn, and I really hate this mix. I hate it so much. I think he would benefit from a co-writer that would take his ideas and then just add another layer to them so that you walk out feeling a little bit more challenged with what you saw, rather than saying that was a really crazy experience. Because that's kind of all you get walking out of this. That was a crazy experience. And I think having someone else come in and just help him with themes, maybe a little bit, some of the scene work, because the scene work is really, really solid. And I think it just could use a little bit of a punch up, and intention, and allowing some of these things to just add up to something else. Like, the kills could be a little bit more pointed. And that would just elevate him from being like top of the line, horror, standard horror fare, to then like, maybe he could play in the Ari Aster, Robert Eggers level of horror. Like, I don't see any reason why this couldn't. Like, it's got all the ingredients. The cake just isn't being baked, I think, to maximum effect. Yeah. That's what I got, Todd, for better or worse. I don't
Interesting. know. I think we found one we disagree on.
Yeah,
this is nice. So.
Yeah.
This is nice. I absolutely loved all of it. I loved the mix. I loved it. I felt totally off and grossed out. And the scream of her in the car, I adored it. I just loved it because I hated it because it was a terrible experience, and they kept going back to it. I think they show it like 3 or 4 times in the movie, right? Like where it opens basically like, or one of the first things that we see is her like upside down like that. So anyway, that, and then like, I guess I wasn't really looking for themes in this movie.
Yeah.
I was just kind of along for the ride and didn't really care about whether or not this was trying to say something. And if it did, cool. And I got enough of it, I think personally, when she said that she just didn't want it to hurt anybody else, when she decided to go ahead and die. So that didn't happen. I think for me, that was enough. I didn't really need any more of that. And then finding out like, because I was waiting for something to happen there, that Morris doesn't come back, oh my God, okay, what is going to happen now? And then the ending is so wild where, she was willing to sacrifice herself, and instead, and if this is reality, she infects everybody in the entire place with this demon, thousands of people, right? Because she kills herself in front of them all. That's pretty crazy. I don't know. I think, I don't really know what to expect from horror films because I don't watch them that much. So to see something like this was everything that I wanted. And I really enjoyed it, but I can totally see somebody like you who, you love horror and you've seen enough of it to know what to expect or whatever. And like, comparing this to like The Shining, isn't really, there's not really a comparison. I even know that necessarily. Not that we should, but I'm only saying that because, Ray Nicholson is in this film and his dad was obviously in The Shining. So anyway, yeah.
I think that's all fair. Like, yeah, I think if this were just a movie that I popped in and saw, I would have gotten my money's worth and then some. And to me, this is like junk food, and the best junk food is really good. Like Taco Bell is like the best junk food that you can get. And to me, this is the Taco Bell of horror movies. Like, you know what? If this is what I'm in the mood for, this is going to slay. And if I'm not in the mood for it, then you know what? I'm just going to feel sick and like, why did I do that to myself?
Well, because I think that's a great point. Because if I would have gone in and this would have been like the level of Hereditary or something, I would not have had the same experience. Like, you know what I mean? I was in the mood for Taco Bell, not, a fine dining. You know what I mean? I'd have been like, God dang it. I just want to get a taco and leave, Anyway. So,
but I'm hoping to see Naomi Scott and other stuff. I think like,
Agreed.
I see the potential for her being amazing. I'm not sold 100% on that yet. But seeing her in something else, with more dramatic intention, would be really cool. So I'm excited to see like her in other projects. I don't know that I've seen her in anything else, to be honest. And so this is my first Naomi Scott, film. And so I'd love to see her in something else. I'd love to see if, as random as this might sound, like Miles Gutierrez-Riley, if he has anything else in the tank. Like he seems like he could potentially be a breakout. And maybe someone else will give him a shot at something. Yeah. But yeah, it's really well cast. I mean, Rosemarie DeWitt is like amazing. Peter Jacobson, I'm always excited to see him pop up. And I'd love to see him get bigger opportunities. And same with Dylan Gelula. Like, we saw her last in Dream Scenario. And I'm like, why doesn't she get more stuff? Like she seems fantastic. Casting A++ in this movie. So, I'm excited to see where that all goes. And, I guess that's my final thoughts. What are you going to recommend this week, man?
So I'm kind of torn between two, but I think after just talking, about scary movies, I'm going to, recommend, Saw, which I'm surprised that we haven't done this. It's a seminal horror film. Like it's the start of a lot of stuff that came after it.
True.
And it's so simple. If you haven't seen it, it's so simple and yet so well done in all the ways that, including the ending, that you could watch it and think, oh, I now see why this movie was made and why this movie was made after this. I even forget what year it came out, but had to be like early 2000s or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe mid
2004.
2000s.
Yeah.
2004. Yeah. Mid 2000s. So just really fantastic, just simple, when you think about horror films, and we talk about Blumhouse and stuff on this and on this podcast a lot, and how they are kings of spending a little bit of money to make something great because they keep it simple, stupid. And horror films are a great tool to be able to do that. This is this is the example of that, right? This is you could literally make this right now in a basement somewhere, yourself. Granted, you need a good colorist and you need good lighting to do that. But yeah, anyway, great film. I couldn't recommend it better. As someone who doesn't like horror or hasn't liked it in the past, I was in love with this movie. So
very nice. Good reco. I'm going to recommend Strange Darling. It's a recent kind of horror thriller film that came out. And I'm getting to be a bigger and bigger fan of Kyle Gallner. Like, this guy, it's hard for me to find like male actors that I'm really excited about. There's so many women that come out, and I feel like the types of characters they get to play get to demonstrate more of their chops. Guys either get recycled, like we're going to see the same 15 leading guys again and again and again. And it's hard to find like new guys that I'm like really excited to see what else they can do that play a really interesting character, add a lot between the lines. Stuff like, I think Jack Rayner, Mamadou Athey, those guys I'm really excited about. And then Kyle Gallner, I think, is more and more starting to find these opportunities. And he got his start way back, I think, on Veronica Mars. And I was always impressed with what he was doing there. And I thought that was kind of the last I'd see of him. And then he kind of just been more and more popping up in films. Like, he was in The First Smile, and he's in the opening scene of this. The whole opener is him. And I think he's fantastic. And him and Strange Darling, also fantastic. So, if you liked Smile 2 and you want something else that is interesting and is going to push some buttons, you might have a really fun time with Strange Darling. Yeah. And stay tuned for next week. We go back to another staple, the scariest film perhaps we will have covered, that I have been avoiding for how many? 297 episodes. So we are going to take a look at Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey. And I'm sure we'll have all kinds of new, fresh things to talk about in that movie that's never been talked about before.
So make sure to tune in.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget, subscribe, drop us a note, leave us a review. And if there's something you want us to cover, let us know. We're still queuing up a recent request that will probably be a little bit longer before we get to it. We're queuing up a few other things. If you want to leave a note on this episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/smile2.
And our quote of the day is from David Cronenberg. Do you remember when you found out you wouldn't live forever? People don't talk about this, but everybody had to go through it because you were not born with that knowledge. That is just crazy. That's crazy. I'm still figuring that out. I'm just now learning that, honestly. I remember when I was a kid, when I was like little in like third grade, looking at the eighth graders thinking, I'll never be that big. I'll never be that big. When you're little, that's never coming, and now I'm 44 and I'm just thinking, where did that, what, and when you have little kids too, and then you have to plan for dying. That's a whole nother level, right? There's this where you realize, oh, everybody dies, but even realizing that you're going to die is not really a realization, because like I said before, when I was in third grade, I'd never be as big as an eighth grader. Right. So I'm never dying. I'm never going to die. Yeah. I know I'm going to die, but I'm never going to die. It's the planning for when you do that is more of a realization to me than the actual realization that everybody dies, because then you have to like come to grips in real time with the fact, with the aftermath of when you're gone. which is a whole nother level. I think it's like maybe that's a midlife crisis. Maybe that's what you want to call it. I don't know. But my realization of that I would die was not really oh my God, epiphany. Still isn't, I guess. But this beautiful to talk about, beautiful and interesting.
It's so good. Yeah, I was just curious because I don't think we've had any quotes from Cronenberg, and he's like the OG of makeup, body horror. Like there's only a few people you could put in his lane. But he's done films like The Fly or Scanners, like just classic, Videodrome, very classic horror films that play on body horror and like amazing makeup effects for its time. And that's just whoa, like a head spinner. Like I love everything you said. I have nothing better to add to that. Like, yeah, do we ever really acknowledge the idea that we're going to die? I mean, we try and then we forget it as soon as we can.
Well, I think that, and this is a whole nother conversation that we don't have time for in this podcast, but I think that society gives you a lot of ability to put that off. That thought off, and which is for better or worse, right? But it's good because you can choose to live your life and do what you want because everything is readily available usually, right? Like you want to make a film, grab your phone. You want to make music, pick up a computer, pick up your phone, whatever, and you can do it. You want to go to the movies, you want to go to a park, whatever. But at the same time, it does kind of suck because sometimes like I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I wake up, I take the kids to school, I go to work, I pick them up, I make dinner, I go to sleep, rinse and repeat every day. 6 months goes by. What the hell happened to 2023? Or now it's 2024. It's about to be 2025. What happened? Right? Because of all of that, then you lose it. And then you wake up from being in 8th grade. Now I'm 44. What the hell happened to the last 35 years? And so it's like this whole, realizing that you're going to die and then doing something with your life because of that, instead of that's just the next thing to do. Instead of what you're doing is the next thing to do is a big proponent of that, right? I think that you're a great example of that. You made a decision in your life, Wes, to change your life drastically because it wasn't serving you. You only live once and you know what you want to do, right? The thing that you're doing doesn't serve you. You know what you want to do and you know that you only live once and you don't want to waste your time. And so you make that decision. That's huge. It's a massive thing that most people don't ever, maybe it's because they don't know what they want to do or they're too afraid to stop doing the thing that's like bringing in money, giving them their life or whatever, or they're too scared. And so they don't do it. But I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that, but other than kudos to you and I think every maybe 10 or 12 episodes, I think I give you kudos because I'm very proud of you. And I think that a quote like this is a really good way to kind of wake you up into the moment,
Yeah. Beautifully said, man.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us. I had a blast. I'm glad that I disagree sometimes with you, because then it keeps us on our toes.
It's nice to finally be the one that didn't like the movie because I'm used to you not liking my movies, and now finally, I didn't like one of your movies.
Yeah, that's great. But as Wes said, please review us, subscribe, all that good stuff. It all helps the channel a lot. If there's a film you'd like to see us pick apart, please send it to us. Maybe down the line we will get to it. But thank you for listening. And until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies. That hurts.
Can you imagine?